We did not stream in the Facebook. It only went to YouTube.
Hello, everybody. If you're here already, or logging on, or watching this on YouTube later, hello, hi, welcome.
Hello. We haven't seen Bree in quite some time.
Life minks when it wants to.
It has hands when it wants to.
It has hands when it wants to, and part of the good thing about the SPG cohort is that we plan ahead. And so I've written these syllabi like months ago, and now here
Yeah.
we
Yes, I think it's helpful. I like that we are getting ahead, and we have most of this year's syllabi done. I'm actually really excited for next month in Giovanni's room.
Oh, I'm going to be an active like participant in that of like reading along instead of like, how we have multiple hats of like participant, host. You're actually reading the book for the first time, but you're also
Yeah,
doing analysis.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so today, ooh, let me get my book out. I have it in my bag, not in my bookshelf, because I thought I had a hair appointment today, and I didn't. But we are getting into All Boys Aren't Blue, George M. Johnson. This is our second book chat for this book. I have been listening to this on Audible, but I buy all the books we read. One day I'll get them all autographed. One day when there's no monkeypox and no COVID, we'll do a big in-person conference and like get all the authors or whatever.
Mhm.
Hello, Marissa. Thank y'all for joining in. Okay, so we're gonna be using the syllabus that was drafted by Bree for
Mhm.
All Boys Aren't Blue. And we're gonna start on page 27 because we're starting on section 2, which is family. And I don't know, I have not finished the book. I'm right at almost at the end of section 3, but section 2 felt rather heavy in its totality. Like I felt
Mhm.
like I felt the most emotional getting through these 4 chapters. And I for some reason thought the teen years would be a little bit more emotional. You know,
Mhm.
I felt it. I felt it, but I think the family when they're just talking about the elders in your family, and the women in their family, and the different trans people in their family, and the queer identity that existed within their family, I think all that together, which is so very touching for me. So I actually really did enjoy. It felt very illuminating. It felt very touching. And, as always, we do put trigger warnings at the beginning of our syllabi, which is why we really encourage people to go pick up the syllabus, especially for these more personal, multi-identity, talking about different oppressed groups, picking up
Absolutely.
the syllabus, because we really do think about community. We do think about being caring and kind as we read through things that might be triggering, or even triggering, even if you don't exist in that identity, but thinking about the role that you've had in other people's lives, thinking about how you might have been the harm doer or the harmed. We definitely take our time with these syllabi. So sbgbookclub.org, go get you yours.
Go get you some. I think it's what, $7.99 on the website right now.
Yeah.
Go run and get that because everything you said is true. And I think this is the section of the book in reading George's work that I was just like, this is the thick of it. Like, yes, it's the middle of the book, and it's like the thick of parsing through what it means, right? Because in this section of the syllabus, thinking a lot about exactly what you said about harm doers, our complicated feelings when the people who cause us harm are our direct family members,
Mhm.
how much our family loves them and cares for them and knows them, and how do we navigate that. And I think that George does an amazing job in this book of using, right, like the form of using letters and writing letters to your family members. And so that's why, like, in thinking about this part of the syllabus, I was like, would I write?
Yeah, so that's the first question we have here that you put. Would you write letters to people in your life? Are they your family? And like I'm thinking, it's so funny because I call her my aunt, but she's actually Annie is my grandmom's sister's daughter. So what is that,
Okay.
like second cousin? But she was born in like 1940, so I call her my aunt. But I was calling her to talk about family stuff because I'm putting together the family tree or whatever. And it's like I would never write them because they're not going to read the letter, but I would like call them, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and after I hung up with her, it reminded me about the amount of time mom used to be like, call your grandma, call your grandma.
Yes.
Or George was talking in this book something about, maybe it was when Gigi, no, Hope. I don't know if they were referencing Hope or they were referencing their aunt. Somebody was on their deathbed and they were talking about writing this letter to them in the past tense. And it made me think about my grandmother. And when my grandmother was dying, how my mom, well, you know, it's not that she was older as well, like sort of end of life. My mom was constantly like, call your grandmother, call your grandmother. I'm like, I don't have a relationship with her. Why am I calling her?
What do you
like,
want?
you know, with the point George makes about like what a great skill it is to learn how to take care of your elders.
Yeah, that's all about nanny in this section that you're talking about like at one point it's like who's helping nanny get dressed and get ready, and who's comfortable enough to do that without falling out laughing, or like you're not too embarrassed or uncomfortable, like knowing that like we are helping her get dressed because she needs help. So if you can't close the door and help her put a bra on, then it's not for you. And I think that's definitely a lesson we come to in being folks who are coming of age and into not only like being a physical adult, like growing in years, but like an adult in a Black family, like in roles and caretaking. Um, it changes depending on how you were cared for.
It does feel like societally, maybe we have gotten a little bit away from that. Because like there's a girl on TikTok who I guess at the end of her grandmother's living with her is when she came up on my For You page, but she's been sharing about her grandmom coming to live with her for 4 months. And I'm like, wow, I've never thought about that. Like having one of my elders in my 20s come live with me. I mean, I don't know, maybe it was economics, maybe living through the recession. I don't know. It never crossed my mind that would be like a thing that I did out of like ability to be able to do it. Like feeling like I could take this on and do it and it be and you know, she's basically talked about like how it was such a great time with her grandmother and what it meant to learn to take care of someone and the patience and the memories that she's not gonna. And I'm like, you know, I was not in that headspace in my 20s at all.
I feel you. I think a conversation similar to that I've been having is just like housing crisis in general. Like, ooh, are people really at the point where like people might have to, out of necessity, move back in with their parents? And I think for me and my mama are at the point where it's just like, if that is our absolute like last stand, don't got 2 red pennies to rub together any longer, we'll move back in with each other. But in terms of just like different expressions of like being, like my mother is very like, we do the laundry because it's Saturday, even if we don't feel like it, even if like you can go through all of your mood and your attitude and your emotional things, Miss Girl, love you, and we're gonna get up and do it because this is the day we said we were going to. So I think for me, that's the part where like nanny seems like that sort of caregiver, like that sort of like, even on page like 128, like where they're talking to young George, who goes by Matt at this point, right? And they're like, you won't know if you don't like Brussels sprouts until you actually try Brussels sprouts. But when you're a kid and you're like, I don't like it, that's a big, you want me to adjust. And understand this life thing that you were telling me about, like you have to try things to know if you like them. I don't like it. It looks nasty.
Yeah, I definitely grew up in a house where you ate one of everything on your plate. So
you have to try it in order to tell them you don't like it. That was definitely reminiscent of my grandmother. Of like, I tried to tell her once that I don't like sweet potatoes. She said, you never had them, you don't know. And so there she put them on the little small plate, right? Not the full, like we're sitting down to eat. And I don't like it, but I like the marshmallows. And so she was like, all right, I can trust you. I can trust that because you're actually putting in that effort.
Do you still not eat sweet potatoes?
I don't like it. I think it's a texture. Like they're like the little bit of stringiness to them that can like stick. I don't like it.
We ate so many sweet potatoes growing up. I could never imagine being like, oh, I don't like sweet potatoes. I definitely was like, I don't like succotash. I don't like that combination of vegetables together. No, I will eat lima because my grandma makes a really good like lima bean soup. And lima beans are actually very nasty to me, but like the soup I could do. But lima beans and corn and peas and carrots, No,
No.
no,
Mm-mm-mm.
no. So Nanny, we're talking about the on 128, which is what you mentioned, is the opening chapter to what is it? Hustler. I was just looking at the title.
Mm-hmm.
Nanny, the caregiver, the hustler, my best friend. And Nanny says, I love all my grandkids, but I love each of you differently because you each need different things.
If
Have
that's
any
not
of y'all
like
thought about the different things y'all need as a child? Yeah.
that is such a classic Black elder thing to say. Like, I love each and every one of y'all, baby. It's just different.
And don't tell me I got favorites. I just love each of y'all because that's probably what that came about. Like, oh, George is your favorite or Matthew is your favorite. And she's like, it's not my favorite. They just need
It's just
something different from the rest of
different.
y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And George selling candy in school, yes. But I grew up during the crack epidemic, the tail end of it. You know, the No Child. I was before No Child Left Behind. We were during the Crime Act of '94 is when I was in school, and so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these ideas about Black children being criminal, and so like selling candy in school was like, oh, a way for you to sell drugs. So that was nipped in the bud. So we weren't allowed to sell candy in school. But
Is
I
that where
definitely,
that came from?
huh?
Is that where that came from?
Yeah, like not selling candy in school was supposedly people were selling drugs through candy. So you couldn't sell anything with an aluminum wrapper on it.
I thought that was definitely like Obama era. Like, we don't
Mm-mm.
want
No, that
the.
started. I was like in fifth grade. I clearly because I for a while I was able, like, it was a bunch of us. Our moms would take us to like host BJ's was really big in Delaware at the time, and we would go to BJ's and you buy like the bags of the big thing of chips, the blow pops, the little what's essentially penny candy, what we call it, and then sell it
Mhm.
for like 25, 50 cents at school and make a little lunch money essentially. And it
Yeah.
was like my mom's way of showing me how to make money, how to save money, like how to plan for like, teaching you like some business lessons. And it
Mhm.
lasted for like a year. But then the next year, I'm in fifth grade. I'm like, who has drugs? It's in the elementary school. Nobody's selling crack.
Please, Josie. Like, y'all are being real, real serious.
Yeah, no, in the middle school, we weren't allowed to do it, but somebody did bring crack to school, but they brought their mama crack. They weren't selling it as candy. They was fascinated watching their mama do it. You know what I mean? Like, I remember the day. I was like, that's real bold because you get a lot of jokes about looking like a crackhead child, and you then brought the crack to school.
So that's you had hustle as a child because you was getting to it. Okay. You said me and Nanny and George and Matt.
No, I felt that. Selling at school was it. Cause like I did not grow up getting an allowance. So, you quickly learn about how to make money on your own. Hello, everyone joining in. Someone did ask what do you do when you have a living grandma who's making the relationship unbearable, but their time is limited? Navigating elders is heavy. I don't believe that George is addressing this idea of elders as though they have to be revered.
Mm-hmm.
I think they provide a lot of space for the complicated adults that existed within their life, in which like their mother's side of the family was very open, very accepting of various identities. Their father's side of the family wasn't outright anything, but they also weren't like embracing.
Right. And it
And
wasn't until George themselves like came into like, ooh, it's something queer happening here. Cause remember, like George has that older brother also. It was just like, we've been here before, we didn't handle it the best. Y'all got another chance to get it together because children be queer and trans
yeah.
and all of these things.
And I think George definitely presents it as though people can be loved from afar.
Absolutely.
Is at the end of, I'm sorry, because I'm listening, so I don't know if I'm at, is it in section 4 or section 3? They talk about the cousin.
It's in, yeah. It's I think it's still 2.
Oh, so it is in family, right? Because that is their
Mhm.
family.
Which
At the
is
end of section 2, they talk about a cousin who sexually abuses them.
right. And those
And
complicated feelings.
I think it's also like acknowledging that person has passed on. And I think, I don't know, it's complicated, right? I don't want to say it's easier because the person's dead for George to be reflective, but I think there's also that acknowledgement that like the way that cousin passed away allowed George to let go of the hard feelings he was holding in that space. And so I think maybe you can extrapolate that to more complicated people, like, because I don't believe that you have to put up with people that are abusive to you. And a lot of times when we're talking about elders who are unbearable, we're often talking about like abusive tendencies. So who am I to say you have to take that person in and care for them? I don't, life ain't, it's not black and white. It's not that easy to like, suggest that everyone does the same thing with all their elders.
Right. And I would say on this point of that comment is just exactly what you said of like, what is the level of unbearable? Is it like every time you wear this particular piece of clothing, like, because that's a level of, your elder gonna run their mouth if you don't have stockings on, versus like blatant homophobia, transphobia, like blatant comments about who you are as a person, and figuring out what that level of unbearable is for you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're on page 30 now in the syllabus. Mm-hmm. Johnson mentions the national rate for houselessness among queer youth, which is staggering, nearly 40% on page 138. How does this statistic relate to our collective values and beliefs about sexuality and children?
I was in a type of bag when I wrote that. I'm just like, oh, we are pulling out the connections. Because I'm writing the syllabus in the midst of folks banning this particular book. Like, it's the most important thing in the world. Yeah. And so trying to pull out these questions of like, all right, so part of this book is also talking about how many queer young people are literally on the streets, like 40%. It's probably more so when we get some more accurate data collection. And that question for me, it was really a check-in with myself also, like, dang, like when we say that we can just let people rock or let things go on without intervention, like there are children who are impacted, because the same folks who like you might look at it as like letting your homeboy just say whatever. Okay, so if this person is a caregiver or has any sort of role with like authority over housing or like my house, my rules, that impacts a child's life. Like these things become very one-to-one when we think about how interpersonal decisions become like you're couch hopping with your friends in high school, right? And so really just thinking about that and just like, oh, we gotta take things more seriously when it comes to like the book banning, all these like healthcare and sports teams, right? Like regulations on the bodies of children, and think about what this actually means.
What is necessary for all children to be housed and loved? And as you were talking, I was just thinking about, how unfortunate like this economic status so many of us are finding ourselves in now with the inflation, the recession, coming out of the pandemic. And then how harder it makes us for us to be able to show up for our community in these like tangible ways, right? Like who then, I have a cousin who's trans and I don't have the ability to take them in. They asked me if they could come live with me when they were like 16, and I was like, I legally don't have the means and the recourse to take a teenager in, because you're gonna go from one southern state to another southern state, and yeah, I'll probably provide the more loving house, but I can't guarantee you're gonna get an education right now with the way we have undone public schools in this country.
That's one sector. Thinking about even if you were to get that young person, or like the other relationships with your family members who may be the people who are quote unquote supposed to be taking care of them, like when people retaliate against folks giving queer and trans kids the care that they want, like it is so easy for somebody seeking care or community in another state suddenly like kidnapping, like the way that the law can bend toward like supporting abusive structures and abusive relationships is also really particularly precarious with children, because there are so many ways that like things are misinterpreted or systems are levied to continue and sustain the abuse. And so it was nice to read a story of George when they're young, being able to like, it's clumsy, it's not the most put together. We all know the language of inclusion and what it means to be queer and trans, but also we are not directly jeopardizing these children's right material well-being. They're being fed and clothed, and we are trying to make a space right in this family to love on each other. And so many children, especially right now, don't even have that. And so that's a big question for me to even throw in this syllabus of like what's necessary. A whole lot, like
Just to
student
get
loan
us
debt cancellation.
thinking about are we really in any place to be of even aid to our own families?
Oof.
And that's something that I've been talking to my siblings about, like rather than waiting until we're at a crisis point, like let's prepare. Let's figure out ways we can prepare, at least with our parents, right? Rather than waiting until they're in the hospital, how can we start to show up now? This question you ask about Johnson's father being a police officer complicate their relationship. Maybe I was like, because I'll be listening and driving, so maybe I wasn't listening as clearly, because they mentioned later on again that their dad is a police officer and approved their housing. And I'm like, did they ever really talk about like the complications of their dad being a police officer?
Around I'm trying to find that part now because I was just like, oh, would never have guessed. But it's when they're talking about the difference between Nanny and Gigi around
Yeah.
the 154 mark. But it's like there's these little moments of they will write it in of like, and this presented problems, and we've had conversations about it since. And like getting the sense of the undertone, like even in this book or the next one, because there's another memoir that comes after this of like that's just something that's not resolved, and y'all, we're human and we're working through it.
I don't know what I would do if I had a parent who's a police officer.
I think it's your whole perception of so much that you don't even like process it.
Serving families requires me to educate parents about how to care for the other children associated with their own. I think we've done quite a few readings in the book club, and oddly enough, I think maybe you've drafted the syllabus for all of them that have addressed like thinking about. Did you do Parable in the Summer, or was that Samantha?
I can't remember. I remember reading. It might have been me. It really might have been.
I know you did Pleasure Activism and Heavy. Yeah, and like thinking about, but we've done a few books, right, that have kind of all touched on this theme. Even Luster, which I hated, right, that have touched on. Oh, that gave me a flashback about like thinking about how we show up for other people's children. And because of the reasons we've done in the book club, when I'm talking to my friends or my homegirls who do not want to have children, but they want to help raise children, I'm like, that is a thing. That is a thing. That is a thing that you can be. I don't know if we have the word for it or the title for it, but if you don't want to have children of your own, but you want to be involved in the children of your community, I think that is a great ambition to have.
For all intents and purposes, it's you can rework even in the language we do have being a godparent, right? Like my godparent was definitely like immediate second mother, right? Like people are saying auntie, like you just have people that have been trusted with the respect and the auntie and the honesty, my bad, to care for you without right having that direct like mama, daddy. Like we can open up our definitions of like family.
I guess I understand though why it would be like somebody might be hesitant to say, "Oh, I want to be an auntie," because we now have all this connotation, especially for Black women, around what it means to be auntie. I want to skip ahead to page 33 in the syllabus. In chapter 9, Johnson writes, "There is truly something to be said about the fact that you sometimes can't see yourself if you can't see other people like you existing, thriving, working. I can only imagine the courage it took for you to be yourself." And that's on page 163. You ask what revelations are happening for Johnson in this moment of the book. I'm pretty sure this is where they are talking about hope.
Yes, they're talking about realizing they have a cousin that's trans.
And honestly, I feel like the way that George explains their own sort of evolution of their gender identity and the different matriarchal figures that kind of play a role in that discovery. I just thought it was very poignant, right? It was very meaningful to to for them to make the point that it's not it's not about immediately fitting into this binary, about immediately saying that, oh, well, I'm trans, and so I'm transitioning into one of two genders, or
Mhm.
I'm gay, so that means that I only date, and then I'm immediately taking on that. George had time to grow up as a effeminate boy and think about how they felt in their body and what identity they wanted to be, and that it doesn't matter about whether somebody is born or raised or socialized, whatever argument you want to make about whether people are born queer or socialized to be queer, that people
Mhm.
are just allowed to have that journey on their own time.
Absolutely. And
I
I
thought
think
that was a very meaningful point. I really enjoyed this chapter, even though it kind of ended on a sad note.
And I think another realization that George is having in this moment of childhood is like, dang, I really like hanging out with my cousin, right? Of like, your friends are really fun. Like, also that moment of like, I think sometimes depending on how folks are introduced to the realities of folks being queer and trans, it can almost like some families go for like a boogeyman like effect of like, ooh, these people are scary and different. And George is having a very real moment of like, you adored my mother, and I could tell that y'all were very close. I watched you and your friends that day, too young to have a full conversation, but old enough to just listen to like realizing that the folks you love in understanding all of their identities, yes, but also they are still people that you truly just like feel love for deeply. And why does it have to be this whole deep analysis of like they shouldn't be allowed to do these things or have these friends or make these choices, right? Of just like we're just kids under like this picnic gazebo in a park, avoiding adults at the family reunion, just like every other child, forced to get up on a hot summer day and come to the family reunion.
It's wild to think about the things that we really didn't like as a child, but now appreciate so much as adults.
Mm-hmm.
What is lost for us collectively when Black queer children are not safe to express themselves? Personally, I think it's why we have such horrible dating lives as adults.
Everybody is
No,
repressing.
nobody know how to communicate because they never were given the opportunity to. There's all these. There's violence. People are not safe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we force people into these binaries because we tell they'll face violence if they don't immediately find community. And so, regardless of their gender, I think Black queer children at large don't have spaces to explore their identity. They quickly have to associate with some community in order to find protection. And that just, it makes it incredible. That's so much trauma that somebody takes on.
Yeah. Even as you open it up like that, it has me thinking. I was definitely gonna say like my first answer is we lose them, right? Like you don't get to learn
Mm.
so much about your child. Like parts of you learn really young if something, a relationship, a behavior, a personality trait is going to make you susceptible to violence, whether it be physical, financial, verbal, emotional, whatever. And you start, or at least I've noticed in myself and in others in working with children from time to time, like they contort themselves real nice and real clean and will just shut off a part of a personality if it's just like I don't feel like hearing about it. I don't feel like being punished for it. I don't feel like being reprimanded. And so you lose out on whole pieces of the people you're claiming to love. But now that you're talking about it, like how it impacts adulthood, I'm definitely also thinking about like when folks aren't safe to be Black queer children, you're sticking to these horrible cues that you learn about what dating, what's socially acceptable, you get to stay alive, housed, and safe dating looks like. Like you get to be cis sexist, and as long as everybody aspires to marriage and filing their taxes together, we'll be fine.
And it's like, even to your point about like you don't get to know your child, that a person in their adulthood doesn't get to know themselves. And I think a lot of us, especially if we are dating men, encounter this because they have really the least amount of space to explore. And I really hate this idea of like I feel like it's very homophobic to suggest that deviant behavior from men symbolizes them being gay. And I personally, I don't know. I haven't read Fry. I'll forget that lady first name. But everybody likes to quote their text on compulsive heterosexuality and men are homoerotic. It's like I get it, but I don't think y'all are reading the text and like how we uphold this system. I don't think y'all are thinking about the patriarchy that y'all are participating in. Y'all are reading this as like a gotcha moment for men.
It's real quick.
While also saying I would never date a bisexual man. You know what I mean? Like,
it's real instant. What does Tony K. Bombara call it? Real instant coffee type of politics that people like. You pick up on the word and you're like, that's what that is. But you're not really like, even though we have all of these nice terms and definitions, not everything fits every behavior that you're observing.
mm-hmm.
And so doing that deeper of like knowing the words is half the battle, being able to readily identify it and keep going and interrogating it or engaging in a conversation or whatever, that's different. That's the hard part.
I love this question you asked on page 34, the syllabus about Hope with the middle name Loretta, and we see the significance of name and naming in the memoir and what resonates for the reader about names throughout the book. Because when I sat down with Jonathan last week, we were talking about how big of a deal it was that George's family allowed them to change their name as like a choice as a child, whether they wanted to be called Matt or George. And it does, even though Nanny kind of starts to get her little punchline in, like, it's gonna take me a while. I might still call you this, but you will need some hope. You know, that the family at the foundation does accept the autonomy of these essentially children in the family to choose their own names.
Absolutely. That moment was I think there are several moments when reading the memoir genre where you're like, all right, which way is this going to go in this retelling? And when it comes to like dead naming folks in your family and stuff, I'm like, all right, like what are we exploring here? And I think it's valuable here to show like that the other members of the family also didn't let up though. Like when we talk about how we get into conflict with our elders, I think it's really important that folks know that like loving your elder doesn't mean you let them overstep, especially in regards to children in your family. You can love them, and loving them is a boundary, a standard. This is happening, and this name is actually really lovely. And look at this middle name that they chose based on somebody else in our family that they love, and we're all gonna get on board.
Yeah, no, I agree. Somebody saying they wanted to use the excerpt about Hope dead naming as well.
Right.
Yeah, when I started too, I was a little like, okay, where are we going? But I think it kind of drove the point home, and I don't know. It's unfortunate that Hope isn't here with us today to like chime in
on how that felt for them. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we've actually covered most all the themes in Act 2. So I want to skip ahead to Act 3.
Absolutely.
See if we can start digging in there. So on the syllabus, that starts on page 39. And Act 3 is chapters 11 through 13. In chapter 11, Johnson recalls their own experience. Okay, so this is the heavy. That's why I was like, it was the chapter about the cousin. They segue in from the family and all the loving matriarchs and all the letters they are writing people they love to the family, to this complicated experience and abusive experience that they had with the cousin. So how, as a reader, how did it feel to read these recollections? Do y'all say that word differently? Recollections? Bring any questions to the surface for you? Because recollections is such like an old Black people word to me. Like that's something I heard talking to my grandparents. I'm recollecting. I recollect correctly. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I like to use it though, because saying memory or like just like you have to call it like it's a memoir. We are recollecting, y'all. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It was heavy, exactly as you said, to start off the bat. I anticipated, right, in reading memoirs, particularly of Black people, there is usually always some reference to sexual violence. And that is an unfortunate reality. But as someone who's read a lot of memoirs, Gabrielle Unions, Janet Mox, others and others and others, there usually becomes a moment where, you know, the setting of the book gets a little bit darker. Like we start like this, it gets really inward. Like it's no longer like, here's this conversation or like this moment, this day. It becomes a very like insular, like I need to tell you all about this time that something happened to me. And so I felt that as soon as Johnson begins chapter 11 with, I contemplated whether I would write about you now that you're dead. I said, oh, we're getting to it. And then with the title of the chapter being Boys Will Be Boys, and actually in undergrad, I'm forgetting the person's name, but somebody did their thesis about Boys Will Be Boys as a study of sexual assault on college campuses. So I was like, oh, this sounds real familiar.
No, absolutely. This was a I don't know. I really think Johnson took a lot of care in this chapter, though. Like they don't leave. I think sometimes when we get into writing, especially on this topic, things are left open for interpretation. Mm-hmm. People have a hard time. Maybe not a hard time, but people are loose with their wording, right? They're very elusive with the things they're discussing. And I think Johnson was very to the point, was very exact about what it was, and also very succinct about what the harm was. Like, even if this was supposedly exploration for their cousin, that, you know, this is we can acknowledge this is a byproduct of their own trauma, but that trauma led them to pass trauma on to me. So this was still a very exploitative, harmful experience for myself. It is not a moment. This is not how I should have been exploring. Even if I can acknowledge that this might have opened up a window of clarity for me, you know, it's like the fact that we are so. What does it mean that we are, as you say, so often reading this in Black memoirs? But like, how are we then in turn thinking about keeping the children safe, right? How are we in turn thinking about providing the arena for safety and exploration rather than telling a queer child that everything they do must be done in the dark?
And that is a big conversation, because for just a small aside, like when you talk to people who are, like you referenced earlier, getting ready to like caretake for children or thinking about what it would mean to parent, like when you get to the topic of how will you talk about sex and sexuality with children, people are like, close my eyes, shut my ears, and that's that. And it's just like, what would it mean to have an active, not just sexual health conversation, but like sex, sexuality, like practices, exploration type of conversation, even though it might be uncomfortable and cause discomfort? Will it keep children safe in terms of being assaulted and harmed in this way?
Yeah, and that leads into the question you asked on page 41, with the quote from page 207. After describing their experience with sexual violence as their personal introduction to sexuality, Johnson writes, the secrecy of sex seemed to become my normal. And so you ask, for children, especially queer children, are there dangers to how we as a society approach sex, sexuality, and sex education with young people? What are the dangers?
They don't know what is going on with their bodies. Like,
yeah, like as the next question leads into, I do think there are structures that maintain our collective secrecy of sex, especially for people that are participating outside of heteronormative sexual interaction, that says it always has to be done in secret. You know, I think they're addressing it this season in P-Valley amongst a lot of other things.
oh.
But you know, Uncle Cliff and Lil Murder's relationship and this whole idea of it having to be done in secrecy for their own safety, because living in Chucalissa, wherever they at, you know, it could mean even for full adults. You know, these are not people that I look at and look like, oh, they're gonna get knocked over very easily, but they even have to be deeply concerned about their own safety from simply being seen out together.
Yeah. And even as you're talking about media representations of what that secrecy looks like, I think there's a reason why so many people, I haven't watched it, but so many queer people I know love Heartstopper. They're like, there's no abuse, like drug abuse, violence, all of that. Like they are just two people, teenagers who get to date each other. And just thinking about how many depictions of young queer childhood and learning your romantic and sexual attractions is about having a violent experience. Like even now as I'm thinking about movies, I'm like, Pariah is so much. Like when you're out here looking for representations of media like Moonlight, the big fight that changes the course of his life, right, is linked and tethered to his sexuality. Like how many examples, real and speculative, do we have to get of Black queer children just wanting to, have a crush and not get punched in the mouth? Do we need before we figure something else out?
Absolutely. Consider the following quote. Think the same masculinity and manhood ideology that forced you and me to hide our identities is the same masculinity and manhood ideology that got you killed. Life can be so tragic in that way. And that's a quote pulled from 212. We're on page 42 of the syllabus. How does Johnson's quote relate to Bell Hooks' belief that patriarchy knows no gender?
That quote was such, like, I know they probably don't mean it to be like gagging, but be like to in this chapter with all that you're telling us, but think the same masculinity and manhood that forced you and me to hide is the same one that took you from us. That is like the most sinister understanding of how deep
It felt like a little shady. It did feel a dash. It felt like a dash of shade. Like how sad. How sad for you.
The rigid confines that we all find ourselves in are quite rigid, aren't they? Mm-hmm. That's what that felt like. Like, we couldn't outrun it, huh, Stink?
Not Stink. I really do enjoy the Bell Hooks quote that patriarchy knows no gender.
It gets people,
especially as we in this little gender wars that's popping off on Twitter, in Black male studies. But like
don't say it, they appear.
I downloaded. I'm gonna read the book though. I'm gonna read the book. I downloaded it. It's in my good note. I don't understand. I don't understand the fixation on Black feminism. Like you can have your points, but what's the fixation on taking down Black feminism?
Black feminism take down Black. Like you could just join in with the other Black feminism. Like we all have different critiques.
That's what I'm like. It's not monolithic, so I don't get this universal like Black feminism as represented by Bell Hooks. It's very, I don't know. Yeah. I'm gonna read the book and then come back with thoughts. I'm gonna read first, because I'm seeing arguments. I'm like, this is exactly what happened in the history program. I am not in a sociology program. I'm a historian. Thank you.
Let's talk about historical circumstances.
I will stay out of it. But they did go back. One of them, the main one, went back and forth with Sarah Haley.
Woo!
And I just didn't understand. I didn't understand, and she very kindly didn't understand either. And she tried, and then she's like, I'm gonna log off now. I'm gonna let this go. Anyhow, okay. Sorry, we have a little academia talk here. Yeah. So the next question or quote is from page 217. I was stuck. I was already into this kid. Me, the boy who thought that all he had to do was go to class, get good grades, and do his best to blend in until he could get the hell out, was now faced with his worst fear. I was crushing. That was so endearing. It also was like a little holleration happening in that note about the boy that came to school with them. And, almost feeling like that boy would blow their cover.
Like I'm doing so good over here, just being a straight A. They know about me, but it's not active. And here you come, and I like you. like we're just on the bus together, and I already know there's something.
Yeah, and then seeing them at the club later on, and then it's like not taking the opportunity to befriend the person. Like y'all befriend y'all are distant friends, like casual distant friends, but feeling like this connection and I don't think you have to act on it intimately, but even just like, I don't know.
I think crushes are so cute and so fun.
Do you? I hate crushing on somebody. I hate it.
I think that crushing is just like As a person who I love having a crush, I think just like, yeah, let me stay in this happy, like in media res moment of like, I don't know too much about you. I don't know how we would interact together, but from like whatever, like casual observation or like friends who develop crushes on each other, I just think the moment of like having a crush before it materializes into like, let's do this work of like a relationship or whatever, is so blissful. Like, especially when you're a child or a teenager, it's just like, let's not get into the weeds of it. I just like you.
I think I'm too much of an Aries. I want to be like, I like you. You know, like that infatuation, that like, la la la. No, no, I like you. Do you like me? Yes or no?
You're like,
Don't
let's
say
get
no.
back to business, okay?
Don't say no.
Are you an Aries Venus? Because I'm an Aries Venus.
Yeah, I'm a Aries with an Aries Venus and a Taurus moon.
Whew. I mean, I can't really talk. I got Taurus sun over here, so I don't know what the distinction is here astrologically on why I'm just like la di da.
What's your moon?
Virgo,
Oh, I don't know, girl. What's your rising?
Sag.
Well, I mean, Sag gets along. You have Sag Taurus get along with everybody. So maybe
I
you like that.
don't.
Okay, like I don't know, because I'm a Gemini rising and a Taurus moon. I don't like that period. Like I'm like a collector of information. So I will dig until I can dig no more. And I will, even when I dig and get the information I need, I'll keep digging.
You said the dossier is going to be full. One thing about me.
Yeah. So like the idea of a crush is just
Yeah.
very frustrating because there's a period of unknowingness. You kind of have to be comfortable in like in the theoretical without having any like
That's
no
me.
study done.
Keep
No,
me in. Don't. Let's
no
not go
study
from
done.
theory to praxis. Let's stay at theory for a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah,
'Cause
you know what I mean? And I want to be like, no, this is not grounded in reality. You know, is this possible? Like, and then how, I don't know. And then I
yeah.
feel goofy. I feel very silly. Like being in love was the dumbest I ever felt.
Oh
Maybe
my.
it's because I'm a heterosexual, but no, it felt really
That could no, for real. That could be it. Queer crushing for me is just like,
yeah.
yes. Let's just buy sunflowers at the farmers market
You know
and go.
what does feel good? Crushing on my friends.
See, and
Because I
that's where
think
you
you know you can have I think you can have romance with friends. So I will like daydream about like romance with like my friends and like doing
and
these.
that's why the crush moment of this book, it hit for me. And then you get the crush moment into like, I wish I could have been around when Crazy in Love dropped. Because feeling it through this book,
Yeah.
I know when those CDs, because it was still like CDs hitting the stands, like go get your copy and put it in your car. I would have
I think I
loved.
was a little too old for the Beyonce Crazy in Love era.
And I wasn't
Don't gut me because Love Renaissance is hitting tonight at midnight. Okay, don't gut me down. Before it was the first album of my life from Beyonce.
now. See, the comments are about to look a lot. And folks.
Four was the first album I liked from beginning to end. I also, because what's interesting, the Dangerously in Love period. What was her first? Was that her first album?
Mm-hmm.
That was her first solo album. I don't know that Beyonce was fully liked at that period in time because I was a little older, and like there is that infamous article. Forget the guy's name, but he was a staff writer at New York Times, black guy who wrote about like A. Marie being more popular and having better songs than Beyonce. But I mean, now in 2020, how outlandish. But in 2003, 2004, whenever that album dropped, like there was like Beyonce was still living down the colorism accusations, right? Like we're still not that far from Latoya and Latavia being kicked out of the group, and then the other light skinned girl being kicked out of the group, and like Beyonce's attachment to her father and the privileges that Solange got within their group. Like those were part of the pop culture conversation at the time.
Yeah.
And so Dangerously in Love, and then what was it, Sasha Fierce or B-Day? It was B-Day. That wasn't really my scene.
I think so. When I was drafting the syllabus, I put on Dangerously in Love because I'm very like I'm low-key method. When it comes to books, I'll be like, all right, so what was you said that this was the album? All right, so let me put it on as I finish writing the rest of the syllabus. And I will say, when I was writing it, Dangerously in Love as an album is quite an upbeat, like, oh, I know it went like the moment that George describes of like putting it on the car and just riding around New Jersey. I know that was blissful. Like, hearing those like alleged like A. Marie like influences, like those high tops and all of this like DC like weird a live band like sound. I was like, yeah, I know when this first dropped in the early 2000s, like this is what created these lifetime stands that are preparing themselves to stay up all night tonight.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen, but I feel like I have attempted and I could never get fully through. There were just too many skips for me on Dangerously in Love and B-Day. I'm also not like a pop girl. I'm very I love Ford from beginning to end because I love R&B music.
Got you. I get you.
And Ford was like, okay, now you're coming back to the black side. It was like the beginning of Black Beyonce. And because Dangerously in Love, she always had a song about being Creole. And so Dangerously in Love has several songs about being Creole on it. And then as well as B-Day. And it's Creole as in like, I'm a different kind of Negro. Creole. You know what I mean? And in Houston, that really is a thing. Their Creole women really do believe that they are different from Black folk. I just couldn't, you know what I mean? I couldn't get down. But I'm gonna give it a try. I might go back and I won't. I will not because Lemonade does enough for me. You know what I mean?
I get you. So that takes us through a lot of the questions in section 2 because I was really feeling that like George love Beyonce, we're gonna put it in the syllabus. Okay.
So if you were reading this book, I encourage all of y'all to also go put Dangerously in Love on.
Absolutely. Because from there, in that moment of like they've graduated, right? They have their car, they can put in their CD, they can go. They end up going to Virginia Union. And that leads us out of like that last moment, leads us into Act 4. But that final chapter is definitely about what does it mean for Black queer folk to not only grow up and get into adolescence, but now you got your high school diploma and you are moving away and you could be right this new version of yourself, right? Like how folks talk about when you attend school residentially and it's moving away, like you can reinvent yourself, you have this choice. And we get to see this young version of them struggling with who am I going to be, like even a name, am I going to be Matthew Johnson, am I going to be George Johnson, like am I going to be out, am I straight to these people? We don't know.
Yeah. Okay, what is the next question? I think from there, once we get out of the Beyonce era, well, not out of, but the Beyonce era leads into Johnson makes friends on campus. Do you remember how you first met your friends of your young adulthood? And it's interesting because on my Patreon, I just posted a video with Tiana, a Fab Socialism, about the pandemic, loneliness, and friendships. And at first I was kind of like a little aghast at her approach to college because she went to American in DC, and the way she experienced college and the friendship she's made. Not that I was gasped, but like thinking, oh, I was so different. But also like, babes, you're just old. You're just a little removed. So you're remembering things differently. You know what I mean? I did do things differently, but her kind of like friends aren't the top priority, right? Like because people have showed themselves to be this way, it's like, if these people come, but I'm not going to let go of my boundary around needing people to be this, right? Especially like she wants people that are thinking about safety first. And I think that's a very reasonable boundary to uphold. But I hadn't even thought about like, who was I at 19? Like I have the memory of it, but I don't, I haven't thought about being that young and, how different it is that I go about making friends now than I did at 19, 20.
And I definitely think in the US college, like undergrad experience space, it's like party like culture and alcohol culture, like mix them together under the pressures of everything being new and not having um, these life lessons, and you making friends because somebody has a bottle of Malibu.
And that's exactly what Tiana said. I was like, well, you from New York. You couldn't use like your NYC currency to like be the cool. She's like, but you don't drink or smoke. So that eliminated a lot. And I'm like, I didn't go to college in an era where like drinking and smoking was the way you made friends. Like the white kids did that, but somebody's asking if I went to a HBCU. I went to a few colleges. I went to HBCU briefly. Yes, I went to Howard University for a little while, but I went to GW first. And I made friends there. One of them, Whitney, who's a community manager for the book club. And I don't ever remember having alcohol with any Black women that I was friends with at GW. I didn't really drink until I got to New York because I didn't turn 21 until I was in New York. And so we did a lot of other things. There was a lot of going to Applebee's, or was it Chili's? Or no, it was TGI Fridays. I was trying to remember which chain was on campus. It was a TGI Fridays on Pennsylvania Ave and getting the happy hour appetizers. And a lot of talking about sex. And what aspiration would look like. Yeah.
My first friends that I have from like young adulthood, like not we're in the same districted high school together, were definitely moments of like we did the pre-college. Like I don't know if other folks undergrads did like a pre-college orientation where like if you wanted to, you can move in early. You just have to do this, this, and this. Davidson had it for students of color. So all of the students of color who checked yes on the form, we got flown down to Charlotte early. We spent a week in Charlotte, not in Davidson, which I think is really particular. And then they bust us up to Davidson, like, here, you're here, yay!
Like racist ass campus, welcome. I took a historic preservation class, and we had to go to Davidson to look at the slave cabins.
Oh, they're all in the back, yeah.
Yeah. And we were just 9 p.m. on a Monday night. I'm like, I really don't care. I really don't. I don't care about the bricks. I don't care about why this building was built in 1700 or like, don't care. Can I go home? I was trying to go back to that Italian restaurant you took me to. That's what I was really trying to get out of there to do.
El Bosco is delicious.
Yeah, I was trying to it was closed because the class didn't end until 9:30. And my, college people are all broke, and none of my classmates wanted to go to eat. But I was like, shit, I'll pay for somebody. That's how much I like to eat. Just come with me.
El Bosco is delicious, right? And so there are ways to make friends, y'all. We are searching for ways as Black people to not do it using substances that.
I think the bigger point that somebody commented on Patreon was that I went to school knowing that I wanted to pledge. And I knew that it was going to be an uphill battle. I knew I wanted to be a Delta. I also just had it in my head that the girls were not going to choose me. So I had to work extra hard. And so I approached networking a little different.
Got you.
But then when I think about that experience, I'm like, I don't know, because the girls were very mean to me. They were very mean to me, which is why I left GW. And then at Howard, I was like, I have no chance in hell making Alpha Chapter. I'm not even staying here for this. There's no way. I'm doing that woman conference the semester before. I don't know no doubt. Please, blood on my own. I do stuff there too. And it's funny. I'm friends with the person who was president of Alpha Chapter when I was there, but I took a class with her, and the professor had this rule that if your phone rang, it was a pop quiz. And my phone rang twice in that class that semester. So I was like, yeah. And sis was sitting right behind me.
I know there was
I'm not getting picked. I'm not getting picked.
It was me. I did.
It was my mom both times.
Lord.
Tag. Okay. We are at the end. Thank y'all for joining us for this discussion. I hope it was illuminating, enlightening. I hope this makes whether you've read it already, whether you're rereading, whether this is your first read, it makes this book more approachable. And it's a beautiful cover.
The artwork is amazing.
I love it. Who did the artwork? Because it's giving Kadir Nelson.
Cassie Gonzalez.
Yes, that's a beautiful book cover. All right. Thank y'all for joining. Don't forget to pick up the syllabi. We will see y'all next Thursday at the same time.
Bye.
Hopefully my hair will be some kind of done then. Talk to y'all later. Bye.